Hello and welcome to Daily Prelims Practice. Here we are going to take up the MCQs based on today's newspaper of The Hindu and Indian Express, which are important from UPSC Prelims exam perspective. The topics for today's discussion are listed on your screen. So let us start the discussion. The first question of today's discussion is based on this pictographic news which has appeared on the page number 1 in The Hindu. It talks about the freshwater lake, that is Dal Lake, which is situated in Srinagar, and it is in news particularly at this point of time as it usually freezes, forming a major tourist attraction. Now this topic is important as UPSC has previously asked many questions on lakes and wetlands. In the year 2020, UPSC has asked this particular question in prelims exam. And it says, with reference to India, Didwana, Kuchaman, Sargol and Khatu are the names of. In this, you have to identify the correct option. On the similar lines, we have designed one practice MCQ based on Dal Lake. It says, consider the following statements with reference to Dal Lake. Moving on to the first statement, and it says, it is the largest freshwater lake of Jammu and Kashmir. Though it is a freshwater lake of Jammu and Kashmir, but it is not the largest. As Vular Lake is the largest freshwater lake of Jammu and Kashmir, this statement becomes incorrect. The second statement says, it has recently been included in the list of Ramsar sites. It is again an incorrect statement because Dal Lake is not included in the list of Ramsar sites. The third statement says it has floating gardens which are known as RAU'S. It is a correct statement because Dal Lake is a part of natural wetland and it has a floating gardens which are known as RAU'S. In this, you have to identify the correct statements. The answer to this question becomes B, which is 3 only. Further, the answer to the previous year question is D, which is saline lakes. Moving on to the next question, which is based on this particular news which has appeared on the page number 9 in The Hindu. It talks about the educational journey of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar. The context of this news is not very important from our UPSC exam perspective, but Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar played very important role in Indian national movement, and UPSC has previously asked many questions based on the important personalities associated with Indian national movement. In the year 2019, UPSC has asked a question on Gandhiji. In this, you have to identify the correct statements. On the similar lines, we have designed one practice MCQ which says, consider the following statements with reference to Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar. In this, you have to identify the correct statements. The first statement says, he attended all the 3 roundtable conferences held during 1930 to 1932. It is a correct statement as Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar represented the depressed classes at roundtable conferences and he attended all the 3 roundtable conferences which were held during this particular time period. The second statement says, he founded All India Depressed Classes Association for removing the difficulties for untouchables. It is an incorrect statement as it was MC Raja who created the All India Depressed Classes Association at Nagpur in the year 1925 and not Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar. So this statement becomes incorrect. The third statement says he signed the Pune Pact of 1932 on the behalf of depressed classes. It is a correct statement as on September 1932, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar signed Pune Pact on the behalf of depressed classes and it abandoned the idea of separate electorates for depressed classes. However, the seats reserved for depressed classes were increased in provincial legislatures and central legislature. As we have to identify the correct statements, the answer to this question becomes A, which is 1 and 3 only. And the answer to the previous year question is B, which is 1 and 3 only. Moving on to the next question, which is based on this news article, which has appeared on the page number 8 in The Hindu. It talks about the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act of 2010. And it says, funds from UN organizations are to be excluded from FCRA. As the government regulations, rules, policies and acts are important, from our exam perspective, this area becomes important for our discussion. In the year 2018, UPSC has asked a question on FRBM. In this, you have to identify the correct statements. The practice question in this regard says, with reference to Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, which is also called FCRA, consider the following statements. In this, you have to identify the correct statements. The first statement says, the registration by NGO under FCRA initially remains valid for 10 years. It is an incorrect statement as the registration by NGOs under FCRA is valid for 5 years and it can be renewed subsequently if they comply with all norms. And FCRA is applicable to all associations, groups, and NGOs which intend to receive the foreign donations. The second statement says political parties are prohibited from receiving any foreign contribution. It is again an incorrect statement, as in the year 2017, Union government has amended the FCRA law, paving the way for political parties to receive funds from foreign companies. As you have to identify the correct statements in this question, the answer to this question becomes D, which is neither 1 nor 2. And the answer to the previous year question is C, which is 1 and 3 only. As in the second statement, the figures have been interchanged and making the statement incorrect. Moving on to the next question, which is based on this particular news, which has appeared on the page number 12 in The Hindu. It talks about the recent ILO meeting in which the Director General of ILO has called for human-centric recovery, which should be inclusive and sustainable. As the international organizations are important from our UPSC Prelims exam perspective, this area becomes important for our discussion. In the year 2018, UPSC has asked this question based on the conventions of ILO. In this, you have to identify the correct answer from the given 4 options. Based on the similar lines, we have designed one practice MCQ which says, consider the following statements regarding ILO. In this, you have to identify the incorrect statements. The first statement says, ILO was formed after the formation of United Nations. It is an incorrect statement as ILO was formed in 1919 and United Nations was formed in 1946. The second statement says, only the governments of member states are party to ILO. It is again an incorrect statement as ILO is the only tripartite UN agency that brings together governments, employers and workers to set the labor standards. The third statement says, India is a founding member of ILO. You must be aware about this fact that India is a founding member of ILO. So this statement is correct. The fourth and the last statement says, India has ratified all the fundamental conventions of ILO. ILO has 8 fundamental conventions which are associated with labor welfare. And India has not ratified 2 out of these 8 conventions. And those are 87 and 98. The 87 convention says freedom of association and protection of right to organize. And the 98 convention says the right to organize and collective bargaining convention. India has not signed these 2 conventions. So this statement again becomes incorrect. As you have to identify the incorrect statements, the answer to this question becomes A, which is 1, 2 and 4. And the answer to the previous year question is also A, as the convention number 138 and 182 are related to child labor. You can see this from here also, 138 and 182. Moving on to the next question, which is based on this news which has appeared on page number 13 in The Hindu. This news article says that Sri Lanka is asking for India's help to boost its dairy output, and it has specifically sought technical assistance from National Dairy Development Board. As we all know that government bodies, regulatory bodies are important from UPSC exam perspective, so we will discuss National Dairy Development Board in detail. And in the year 2022, UPSC has asked a question on tea board, and it says, with reference to tea board in India, consider the following statements. In this, you have to identify the correct statements. And on the similar lines, we have designed one practice MCQ which says, with reference to National Dairy Development Board in India, consider the following statements. The first statement says, it is a statutory body with its headquarters located in Ahmedabad, Gujarat. It is a factually correct statement as National Dairy Development Board is a statutory body and its headquarters are in Ahmedabad, which is in Gujarat. The second statement says, its efforts has been able to transform the rural economy by making dairying a profitable business. It is again a correct statement as National Dairy Development Board has helped in transforming the rural economy and it played an important role in Operation Flood. The third statement says it functions under Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. It is an incorrect statement as the National Dairy Development Board functions under the Ministry of Animal Husbandry, Dairying and Fishing. As you have to identify the correct statements in this question, the answer to this question becomes D, which is 1 and 2 only. And the answer to the previous year question is also D, which is 1 and 4. The last question of today's discussion is based on this particular news which has appeared on the page number 14 in Indian Express. It basically talks about the pressure which G7 is putting on Moscow with the oil price cap. The context of this news is not very important from our exam perspective, but G7 is an important international organization and UPSC has previously asked many questions on international bodies. Like in 2022, UPSC has asked a question on G20 common framework. In this, you have to identify the correct statements from the given two statements. On the similar lines, we have designed one practice MCQ which says, with reference to group of 7, which is G7, consider the following statements. In this, you have to identify the correct statements. The first statement says, most of the G7 countries had high level of gross debt. It is a correct statement as the G7 countries like Japan, US and Italy has high level of gross debt. The second statement says the permanent secretariat of G7 is located in Paris. It is an incorrect statement as G7 has no permanent secretariat or a formal charter. The presidency rotates among the member countries each year and the country is in charge of setting the agenda. So it is an incorrect statement. The third statement says recently a pandemic fund was introduced for pandemic prevention and response by G7. It is an incorrect statement as there was no such fund created by G7 or introduced by G7. The intermediary fund for pandemic prevention is hosted by World Bank and G7 has nothing to do with it. So the answer to this question becomes B, which is 1 only. And the answer to the previous year question is C, which is both 1 and 2.